Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more amazing family stories and helpful parenting tips. Let me share an unforgettable real-life incident that taught me just how crucial it is to notice even the smallest details when caring for a newborn. It was early fall in our calm suburban neighborhood. My husband, Michael, was rushing out the door, already running late for his shift at a nearby tech firm. Our infant son, Noah, had been crying since well before sunrise, earlier and louder than usual. On most mornings, he'd greet the day around 7 with soft coos or mild fussing, but now his relentless wails filled the house, sending my heart racing. I scooped Noah from his crib, noticing the diaper was slightly damp. Changing it didn't help. He arched his back and cried harder when I tried to nurse him. Michael hovered in the doorway, his tie still half-tied. "Should I stay?" he asked, clearly worried. Though I longed for him to remain, I forced a weak smile and assured him I'd be fine. A moment later, the front door clicked shut, and I felt a surge of panic at being left alone with a baby I couldn't calm. I paced the nursery, rocking Noah gently in my arms and humming lullabies that usually soothed him. His cries only intensified, echoing off the pastel walls decorated with plush animals and framed family photos. Every minute felt like an eternity, and I kept glancing at the clock, astonished by how slowly time was crawling. My chest tightened as each shrill sob suggested something deeper was wrong. Desperate, I checked his temperature, normal. I examined his tiny limbs for injuries, nothing. The ache in my arms from holding him was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. Noah's tear-streaked face and trembling cries felt like a silent accusation. "Why aren't you fixing this? Why can't you understand?" Eventually, I sank into the rocking chair by the window. The golden morning light streamed in, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt. Noah's screams continued unabated, and I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. Anxiety gnawed at me. Could this be a sign of a serious condition? My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. I called my mother, who lived a few states away and had raised 4 kids. She calmly ran through common issues: gas, teething, ear infections, or perhaps just an unexplained newborn meltdown. None of it seemed to fit Noah's all-consuming distress. The more she talked, the more certain I became that something else was happening, something I hadn't identified. By the time I hung up, my nerves were frayed. Noah's face was red and tear-streaked, and I could feel my own eyes burning with exhaustion. I tried another diaper change, rocked him in a different position, and even turned on a gentle lullaby playlist. Nothing brought him relief. The neighbors downstairs started banging on their ceiling in annoyance, but my priority was figuring out why my baby was so inconsolable. When my phone rang again, it was Michael on his break. Over the relentless crying, I told him I might need to call the pediatrician. He offered to leave work early, which gave me a shred of hope, but time was dragging. The living room was awash in bright morning light as I wandered back and forth, Noah clutched to my shoulder, his tiny fist flailing. I surveyed the house for any clue, but everything looked normal: no hazards, no strange drafts, nothing obviously wrong. Setting Noah in his crib for just a moment to rest my arms only made him wail louder. I felt guilt pierce my heart as I watched him thrash in frustration. My mother's words about calling the pediatrician echoed in my mind, but I hesitated. Could it truly be a medical emergency? Or was I simply panicking because I was a first-time mom? I tried burping him again, checked his diaper once more, and ran my fingers along the edges of his onesie. It all seemed normal, yet a nagging feeling told me I was missing something obvious. Babies can't talk. Crying is their only way to communicate discomfort. But this felt like more than standard fussiness. It felt urgent. Time crawled forward, and still no solution presented itself. My nerves were on edge, and tears threatened to spill down my cheeks. Noah's face was flushed from crying so hard, and I worried he might wear himself out completely. I thought about calling a friend who had recently become a mother as well, but I doubted she'd have any more insight than my mom had offered. Standing there, I became acutely aware of how helpless I felt. I'd read parenting guides, watched countless videos, and believed I was prepared for any infant scenario. Yet here I was, clueless about what was tormenting my child. The sensation of failure was overwhelming. I forced myself to take a few calming breaths, reminding myself that babies can sense our stress, and I didn't want to add to his distress. Still, Noah's screams refused to relent. I tried to nurse him once again. He turned his head away, cheeks wet and eyes squeezed shut in pure misery. My frustration peaked, and I contemplated heading straight to urgent care. But something told me to hold off just a little longer and do one more thorough check. I thought back to a moment in the nursery when I changed his diaper. I'd been so sure it was just slightly damp. What if there was more to it? Could something be hidden in the diaper or clothing? That small, persistent voice in my head refused to be silenced. I decided that before I made any phone calls, I'd inspect everything carefully. My intuition screamed that something, however minor, was triggering all this anguish. Little did I know how important that final check would be. Time felt frozen as Noah's cries reverberated through every corner of our home, piercing the air like a siren that refused to quit. My arms trembled from holding him so tightly, but each time I tried setting him down, his screams escalated to a new level of intensity. I'd heard that newborns might cry inconsolably for no obvious reason, yet this was different. He sounded as though he was in genuine pain, and the mystery of it all was tearing me apart. I paced the hallway, gently bouncing Noah and humming a lullaby my grandmother used to sing. Occasionally, he paused to gasp for air, then resumed wailing with renewed vigor. I murmured, "Shh, it's okay, baby," while kissing the top of his head, but my words felt inadequate against his unyielding sobs. Feeling my own tears threaten, I carried him into the living room and collapsed onto the couch. Noah's tiny fists flailed, and his cheeks were damp with tears. My eyes landed on the stack of baby advice books scattered on the coffee table, mocking me with their unhelpful checklists. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew plenty of parents survived these rough patches, but at that moment, I felt utterly alone. My phone buzzed with a call from my best friend, Sarah, a new mom herself. I stared at the screen, too overwhelmed to answer. Noah's cries drowned out the ringtone before it went to voicemail. I swallowed a lump of frustration, remembering how Sarah once told me her son's relentless crying was caused by a tiny scratch on his torso that had gone unnoticed for hours. Was there something similar going on with Noah? Each time I tried to examine him, though, he screamed louder, thrashing in my arms. As the minutes dragged on, I tried another diaper change. It was only slightly wet, but I replaced it anyway, praying for even a glimmer of relief. Nothing changed. I checked the seams of his onesie, which felt smooth. Could he be hungry? He refused the breast, turning his head away with a pitiful whimper before resuming his frantic crying. Desperation mounting, I walked into the kitchen, hoping the white noise of the dishwasher might distract him. Some parents swear by vacuums, hairdryers, anything to create a steady hum that soothes a baby. Yet Noah's sobs only grew choppier, as if he was wearing himself out. My heart lurched with fear. If he kept this up, he'd exhaust himself, or worse. Suddenly, I remembered the pediatric nurse hotline our clinic provided. My fingers fumbled as I dialed, cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder. Over Noah's ear-splitting cries, I spoke to a nurse named Kathy, who calmly guided me through the usual checks: temperature, signs of rash, tight or abrasive clothing, possible colic. I'd already done them all. Kathy gently suggested heading to the pediatrician's office if he didn't calm down soon. Though relieved to confirm I hadn't overlooked a glaring emergency, I still had no solution. I hung up, tears burning my eyes. The kitchen felt oppressive, even with the window open to a pleasant breeze. Noah's face was bright red, and I worried about him overheating. I tried dabbing his forehead with a cool washcloth, but he jerked away, sobbing harder. The tension in the air felt thick, and I found it hard to breathe. Just then, the front door opened. Michael stood there, worry etched on his face. "I left work," he said simply. He took Noah from my arms and tried gently bouncing him, whispering reassuring words. For a moment, I watched in shaky relief, hoping our baby might find comfort in his father's arms. But Noah kept crying, seemingly inconsolable. Michael's eyes locked with mine, reflecting my own mix of fear and exhaustion. "What have you tried?" he asked softly. I listed everything: feeding, diapers, rocking, the nurse hotline, attempts at white noise. Nothing made a dent in Noah's frantic state. Michael exhaled sharply, scanning the room as though searching for an overlooked solution. We agreed to take Noah to the pediatrician if he didn't settle soon. I grabbed a diaper bag, tossing in extra diapers, wipes, and a soft blanket. Michael reached for the car seat, fumbling with the straps in his haste. We could hardly hear each other over Noah's shrieks. My heart pounded so loudly that my head felt fuzzy, like I was operating in a tunnel of noise and tension. Once we managed to buckle Noah into the car seat, we headed toward the front door. The sudden whoosh of fresh air hit us as we stepped outside, the sun high in the sky. Neighbors watering lawns or walking their dogs shot us sympathetic or curious glances, but I barely registered them. My entire focus was on Noah, whose cries tore at my every nerve. Michael opened the back door of our car, clicking the seat into place. I hovered, trying to calm Noah with gentle hushes, but he kept wailing. My mind raced with half-formed thoughts. Was this truly a random newborn meltdown, or was something else at play? The nurse had said we'd done everything right so far. That left us with few answers. Michael climbed into the driver's seat, and I slid into the back beside Noah. The car engine rumbled, and we pulled away from the curb. Sometimes, the motion of a car can lull a baby to sleep, but not this time. Noah's screams bounced off the windows, filling the small space until it felt unbearable. Michael glanced in the rearview mirror, worry etched in every line of his face. I leaned over the car seat, stroking Noah's trembling arm. "We're almost there," I murmured, though part of me feared how empty those words might be if the pediatrician also found no explanation. Yet we had no choice. We needed professional help to figure out why our sweet boy was in such distress. Little did we know the cause was something simple, hiding in a place we hadn't thoroughly inspected, and it would soon make itself known in the most unexpected way. By the time we arrived at the pediatrician's office, Noah's cries had finally subsided into exhausted whimpers. His cheeks were raw from tears, and my nerves felt equally frayed. The waiting area teemed with parents juggling diaper bags, strollers, and restless toddlers. We checked in, then waited in tense silence, exchanging worried glances. Eventually, a nurse led us to a small exam room decorated with bright murals of animals. I placed Noah on the padded table, where he lay limp, too drained to launch another full-blown scream. The nurse took his vitals. Everything looked normal, she said, but she would alert the doctor to our concerns. My heart pounded as we attempted to soothe Noah with gentle whispers. Dr. Sandoval entered with her usual calm demeanor. We described the harrowing morning in detail, from the first wail at dawn to the frantic steps we'd taken at home. She performed a careful exam of Noah, checking his ears, throat, and abdomen, pressing gently here and there. He whimpered and squirmed, but didn't scream the way he had earlier. Afterward, Dr. Sandoval gave us a sympathetic look. "I'm not seeing signs of infection or injury," she said. "This could be severe gas or reflux. I'll prescribe some probiotic drops. If he has another episode like this, please contact me again." I felt torn between relief and uncertainty. How could something like gas cause hours of such intense crying? Still, Dr. Sandoval was the professional, and I clung to her words. We left the office, Noah nodding off in his car seat. Michael tried to sound optimistic, but we both wore the same worried expression. Once at home, the house felt eerily quiet after the chaos of the morning. I unbuckled Noah, and he gave a brief, pitiful whine before settling against my shoulder. Michael vanished into the kitchen and returned with bottled water and granola bars, urging me to eat. My stomach was knotted, and my mind buzzed with unanswered questions. Friends and family had sent messages asking for updates, but I had no solid explanation to give them. I set Noah in his bassinet, half expecting him to burst into fresh screams. Instead, he slept fitfully, tiny hiccups escaping now and then. Michael and I sank onto the couch, our thoughts heavy. "Do you really think it's just gas?" he asked. I shrugged, hugging my knees. "I want to believe it," I said, "but this morning was too extreme." Michael nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "We'll keep an eye on him. If it happens again, maybe we should get a second opinion." I agreed, though neither of us voiced our deeper worries. What if something more serious lurked beneath the surface? An hour later, Noah stirred, and I braced myself. But he only let out a weak cry and latched onto me when I tried nursing him again. Relief coursed through me. Michael watched, exhaling in what sounded like gratitude mixed with residual tension. The baby we knew, our sweet, gently fussing Noah, seemed to be returning. Even so, a lingering doubt gnawed at me. Dr. Sandoval's reassurance hadn't erased the memory of that frantic, unending scream. Stories surfaced in my mind about bizarre manufacturing defects or hidden irritants. Could there be something we overlooked in his clothes or diapers? It seemed far-fetched, but the notion wouldn't leave me. That evening, we maintained a vigilant watch, waiting for another meltdown that never came. Noah slept in short bursts, rousing to nurse, then drifting off again. The house felt too quiet, as though the walls were braced for a storm that might return at any moment. Michael and I exchanged tired smiles, but neither of us could truly relax. Before bed, I hovered by Noah's crib, gazing at his peaceful face. He looked content, no scrunched-up forehead, no frantic kicks. Maybe we'd seen the last of the day's horrors. Yet part of me still braced for another wave, an instinct whispering that something vital remained undiscovered. If only I'd known how right I was, and how close we were to finding the real cause. Morning arrived with cautious optimism. Noah slept intermittently through the night, waking a few times but never screaming as before. Michael had managed to return to work, though I sensed his lingering worry in every text he sent. I tried to reassure him that things seemed better, at least for now. Around mid-morning, Noah started fussing again. My heart lurched, I was terrified it would escalate into the relentless wail of the previous day. I changed his diaper, checked his outfit, and tried to feed him. This time, however, the fussiness subsided into an uneasy grumble rather than a full-blown meltdown. Still, something felt off. My instincts were on high alert. Even though Noah wasn't screaming, he squirmed as though uncomfortable. He refused to nurse for more than a few seconds, twisting his body away from me. I recalled Dr. Sandoval's words about gas or reflux, but a nagging voice in my head wouldn't let go of the possibility that something more tangible was bothering him. Desperate for fresh air and a change of scenery, I decided to take him for a short stroller walk around the neighborhood. Sometimes, the gentle motion helps babies relax. Outside, the early fall sun felt warm on my skin, and I savored a slight breeze that carried the faint scent of cut grass. Noah dozed off for a while, letting me hope the worst was truly behind us. After a few blocks, though, he roused with a shrill cry. I paused on the sidewalk, scanning him for any sign of distress. His face reddened, and he kicked his legs insistently against the stroller's cushion. Panicking, I hurried back home, each block seeming longer than the last. By the time I reached our front door, Noah was crying loud enough to draw the attention of a passing neighbor, who offered a sympathetic nod. Inside, I lifted Noah out of the stroller and tried rocking him in my arms. No improvement. His scream seemed to erupt from deep within, a cry of genuine pain. My heart pounded in sync with his anguish, and I felt my nerves fraying all over again. Then it struck me, something I'd only done briefly before. I should check his diaper area more carefully. Was there any chance a stray thread or tag might be scratching him? Perhaps a piece of the diaper's inner lining was crumpled oddly. I'd glanced at these things before, but never with hyper-focused scrutiny. Gently, I laid Noah on his changing pad, his piercing cries ringing in my ears. My hands trembled as I undid the diaper's tabs. It was only slightly wet, but I removed it anyway. He howled, little fist waving in protest. Bracing myself, I ran my fingertips along the entire interior of the diaper. Smooth, except my thumb caught on something faintly rough near the elastic side. At first, I assumed it might be a clump of diaper material. But as I pinched the spot, I felt a tiny prick. Alarmed, I carefully peeled back a thin section of the diaper's lining. My breath caught in my throat. A minuscule, curved piece of thin plastic protruded from the padding. It was so small that someone could easily miss it at a glance, but sharp enough to irritate skin if pressed against it repeatedly. My chest tightened with a mixture of relief and horror. Could this be the culprit behind Noah's relentless screaming? Had this sharp fragment been jabbing into his sensitive skin whenever he moved his legs? I felt sick at the thought that my baby had been in pain because of a hidden defect in an everyday diaper. Noah continued to cry, though more softly now, as though my frantic pause had distracted him. I gently freed the plastic bit, dropping it onto a tissue so I could examine it more closely. It looked like a stray piece from the manufacturing process, some leftover shard that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Hot tears blurred my vision as I realized the significance. This one, almost invisible fragment might have been causing all that agony. My mind flashed back to the doctor's office, where everything had seemed normal, and to my own repeated checks of his diaper. I'd never thought to run my fingers along every seam. I grabbed a fresh diaper from a different pack, one we'd purchased earlier, and replaced the defective one, making sure to clean Noah's skin gently. There were faint red marks near his thigh, likely from friction against that sharp edge. My heart sank at the idea that I hadn't found it sooner. But at least now, I had a real answer. With trembling arms, I picked Noah up and held him close. His cries tapered off, replaced by a few exhausted hiccups. I whispered apologies into his soft hair, feeling an overwhelming flood of guilt and relief. How many parents suspect a manufactured defect in something as routine as a diaper? It seemed so unlikely, yet it was the truth staring me in the face. Still shaky, I placed the plastic fragment in a small Ziploc bag, determined to keep it as evidence. Questions buzzed in my mind. Should I contact the diaper company? Demand a recall or a refund? I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was that I had to share this finding with Michael, and probably with our pediatrician. Noah lay against my chest, finally quiet. His face still looked worn from crying, but his body relaxed in a way I hadn't felt since the previous day. A tidal wave of emotion swelled in me, anger at the defect, guilt for not discovering it sooner, and immense relief that I'd finally found something concrete. I texted Michael with shaky fingers, found a piece of plastic in his diaper, sharp. That might be why he's been screaming. The response came almost instantly. "Oh my God. Are you serious? Is he okay?" I typed back. "He's calm now. We need to talk to the pediatrician and maybe call the company. Cradling Noah, I glanced at the clock. Barely midday, and it felt like I'd lived a lifetime in the last few hours. My baby, who'd screamed until he was hoarse, now drifted into an uneasy doze, safe in my arms. A tear slid down my cheek as I breathed a shaky sigh of relief, vowing to be more vigilant in checking every detail of the products we use. That evening, Michael rushed through the front door, eyes wide with worry and disbelief. I showed him the tiny piece of plastic, sealed in its bag. His face paled. "How does that even happen?" he asked, voice tight with anger. I shook my head, equally baffled. We were both furious that a product designed for infants could harbor such a dangerous defect. Noah was calmer than he'd been in days, though still fussy at times. Understandably, after such an ordeal, his screams were nowhere near the all-consuming shrieks we'd heard before. We agreed it was critical to inspect our remaining diapers. Michael opened the rest of that package, running his fingers along the linings. In one more diaper, he found a second small piece of plastic protruding near the elastic edge, just like the first. My stomach churned, imagining other parents unknowingly using that batch. We carefully set those diapers aside, deciding to contact the company's customer service line as soon as possible. Our pediatrician, Dr. Sandoval, was also notified. She was shocked and urged us to report it formally. She explained that while such defects were rare, they can happen during manufacturing. The plastic bits get trapped in the diaper layers, going unnoticed until a baby ends up crying in pain. Over the next few days, the difference in Noah's demeanor was striking. Without the sharp edges digging into his skin, his episodes of crying diminished drastically. I still felt a pang of guilt each time I remembered how long it had taken us to uncover the cause. But I also understood that parenting is a relentless learning curve. Sometimes, the most obvious solution is the last one we suspect. Determined to prevent a repeat scenario, I started checking every new diaper before putting it on Noah. I'd run my fingers around the leg cuffs and the interior, searching for any irregularities. It felt a little over the top, but I didn't care. One small oversight had already caused our family so much distress. Better safe than sorry had become my new mantra. Word spread quickly among our circle of friends. Sarah, the one who told me about her baby's mysterious scratch, called to express her shock. "I can't believe it," she said. "I'd never have guessed something like that could be hiding in a diaper." We ended up sharing the story on social media, urging parents to do quick inspections to avoid a similar catastrophe. The response was overwhelming. Other parents shared their own near misses with defective products, from baby clothes with hidden pins to bottles with sharp plastic seams. Meanwhile, the diaper company apologized profusely when we contacted them. They offered a refund and asked for the defective batch numbers so they could investigate further. Though it didn't erase our ordeal, it reassured me that they were taking the issue seriously. Still, no amount of apology could fully soothe the memory of Noah's pain. Looking back, I realized how easily we assume that products designed for infants must be safe. It never occurred to me that a faulty diaper could be the culprit behind hours of relentless crying. I'd been ready to blame gas, colic, or some obscure medical issue. But the simplest, most straightforward explanation turned out to be correct. Our experience became a catalyst for change in my own routines. I became more vigilant about everything that came into contact with Noah's skin, from onesies to blankets to even the corners of his crib sheets. Michael and I also learned a powerful lesson about trusting our parental intuition. If a baby's crying feels different, more frantic, more anguished, sometimes it truly is a sign that something tangible is wrong. In the aftermath, I recorded a video for my YouTube channel, sharing our ordeal in the hope it might help another family. "Always check diapers thoroughly," I said to the camera, holding up the tiny plastic fragment as a cautionary example. It sounds ridiculous that such a small piece could cause such a big problem, but trust me, it can. The response was immediate, with countless parents expressing gratitude for the warning. Noah, for his part, recovered quickly from his ordeal. His fussiness waned, replaced by the usual newborn ups and downs. The red marks near his thigh faded within a couple of days, and his screams became less frequent, more aligned with normal baby cues. Each time I held him, I felt an overpowering mix of relief and guilt, wishing I could have spared him even a fraction of that discomfort. Yet, in a strange way, the whole episode reinforced just how deeply Michael and I love our child. We went at any length possible: visits to the pediatrician, middle-of-the-night phone calls, endless rocking to find the root of his distress. And when we did find it, we took immediate action to ensure it wouldn't happen again. Now, when I listen to Noah's soft coos or watch him drift off to sleep, I'm reminded of how a single overlooked detail can turn a peaceful household upside down. Parenting is a roller coaster, full of unexpected twists, but it's also a journey of discovery and perseverance. We may not be perfect, but we're determined to learn as we go, checking every seam and edge, ready to protect our son from unseen hazards. And through it all, we hold on to the hope that by sharing our story, we might save another family from facing the same heartbreak. Thank you for reading this story to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more real-life family experiences, tips for new parents, and honest discussions about the joys and challenges of raising a child.